Hi, everyone. I'm Zac Greenberg, co-founder of Musicians for Health and host of Brain Food, this amazing show where we get to talk to amazing people about amazing things. With us today, we have Stacy Sims, founder of The Well and a local total shaker and mover in Cincinnati, getting lots of things done in lots of different places. Could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization, Stacy?
Yes, thanks, Zach. So, yes, I'm a Cincinnatian, and despite moving around a bit and having the luxury of traveling and connecting in various parts of the world, I've called Cincinnati home for most of my life. And presently, under the well.world, which is the kind of holder of the programs that I run, we have City Silence, which is a very open invitation to help support people who want to practice meditation, but not necessarily all by themselves. So it invites people to sit in community spaces in public places and just hold space for silence and to invite others to join. The True Body Project is a program I started in 2005 that is, it's trauma-informed, intersectional, and it is, I always struggle to describe it succinctly, but what it does is that it really allows us to experience one another through the lens of creativity, art, play, mindfulness, movement, with a constant return to really understanding what our body is able to tell us, support us, sort of every step of the way of our life. So really encouraging our connection to our bodies, the somatic sensibility in all of the processes. And then finally, mindful music moments, and that's mindfulness in classical music usually is the form that has been, that we create little audio bundles so that our biggest user are schools, and so that it creates a daily experience for both students, staff, and parents at home to appreciate music as well as self. So just 3 to 4 minutes of being able to check in with breathing, check in with tension, and then the form of music takes one's mind and allows us to create, become curious, find flow in a shared experience.
Mm-hmm. And how have you
found a handful of other things?
Yeah.
That's enough.
And how have you found the community reacting to this in different demographics? Have you found, I know, that we're talking a lot about working in schools, and do you find, for as far as exploring mindfulness, is there a limitation on who does it, or is there a limitation for who it could benefit best, or how, as someone who's new to this, who would benefit and how would they start?
So, well, I'm going to answer I think sort of the first question was sort of how is it being received?
Yeah.
And so I guess I would say my expertise is in my area of deep interest and passion is really understanding that a lot of the mental and emotional stress that we suffer it doesn't just live in the mind. It just doesn't live in the emotion. That trauma and toxic stress are first and foremost physiological constraints on the entire body. So I've been working to support youth, folks who've suffered trauma in different parts of the world for a really long time, with a lot of these kinds of techniques. 10 years ago, if I would go into a school, the school, very well-intentioned school leadership might say, oh, you then should work with this group of kids. or this group of kids. There was this, I always felt that it was for everyone, that everyone could very easily step away from their best self by a lot of different reasons and ways. But I understood that in that school paradigm that there was this idea of this sort of at-risk group of youth that needed to be better served. And that could shapeshift. In the suburbs, it might be girls who are struggling with body image. In the urban environment, it might be youth who were struggling because they had incarcerated parents or some other way. Skip forward to the last couple of years. If you go into a school, there's the amount of toxic stress, the amount of intensity of the trauma responses from a vast number of youth has become so overwhelming that if I go into a school and talk about a mindfulness program or a trauma-informed mindfulness program, everybody in that school not only has been to 15 conferences about it, but also feels it deeply in their own bodies. So I just don't ever get any pushback, because the good news is the program is growing. We now have 170 schools nationally. The bad news is that it speaks to the level of collective unwellness. And this is the same conversation I've been having before a pandemic. Mm-hmm. And before this moment of racial inequity has become the symphony of our moment. So everybody now, I think, knows that I feel like as adults to children sort of understand that if we're not dealing in some meaningful way with how we feel stress impacting our brain, impacting our body, impacting our ability to connect, we won't, we really can't get anywhere. There's a big opportunity. Your second question was more sort of like, if this even sounds interesting to you, how do you start?
Yeah, when someone gets to the point kind of you're saying, like, where did, I mean, because for me, who has been around this a bit, it still can be daunting and overwhelming to just be able to carve out some time, to do that. When you're overwhelmed, it can be so easy to be overwhelmed and not focus. So what is a good way to start?
So the trick with mindfulness, like any other practice, is that stepping into the space of the medicine or the healing is it's always the trickiest part. It's like moving into a new movement practice or a diet, or, I'm going to start writing after thinking about writing forever.
Yeah.
So if I could bottle what's going to take you into the practice, that would be the best. So I'll speak to once the commitment has been made. Here's, I think, the important part of the commitment to a mindfulness practice. I'm going to share a bunch of tools, and we can put them in writing too. We have a bunch of free resources at the Well. There are a gazillion apps out there that are all fantastic. Mm-hmm. There are now more than ever, there's wonderful, I'm doing another 4-hour sit on Saturday with a wonderful teacher virtually. There are all these virtual experiences. So I'm going to share all these. Mm-hmm. I think the important thing to remember from individuals who are thinking like, I've tried it, I know I should, I can't, my brain, my thoughts won't. The trick is to show up in some relative level of stillness with a commitment to become aware of what is happening outside, which are the conditions, and inside, which is the conditioning. Mm. And so it's not about, like, if you notice, like, oh my gosh, I'm thinking about these emails that I have to answer. I'm thinking about what I want to eat next. I'm thinking I'm terrible at this. essentially that probably is what happens in 90% of meditators' minds.
Uh-huh.
The trick is that there are techniques like breath noticing, body sensing. There's different techniques and traditions that basically invite you to stay longer in the space of noticing and awareness. And then you start to, not necessarily on day 1, but on day 4, day 7, day 20, day 50, you start to have an understanding of the nature of your own mind. You start to understand sort of and not judge or be angry at your monkey mind.
Mm-hmm.
Or you just start to notice, like, what are the thought habits that are sort of like the little puppy, and which are the ones that are sort of heavy, that really seem like, or heavy and shift. Like I have ones where, like, a constant thought that I have, if I'm not really nourished and fueled properly and grounded, is feeling maybe like there's, like, that I'm not being seen in some way. Like I need to be, like, how come I didn't get invited to that cohort? And the internet's terrible for it, because we have this constant view that the world is moving on without us.
Yeah.
But partially, the mindfulness helps you really understand not just what that thought is, but also what lives underneath it. There's a great way of thinking about the sort of four ways of thinking about the movement of the mind. And the first one is just free association.
Mm-hmm.
And free association is cool. I mean, none of these things are bad.
Yeah.
Free association. The next one would be, I would say, flow, like an artist practice of flow.
Uh-huh.
And flow, what I mean in the practice of the mind, is it's where the mind is engaged in something particular. It could be gardening, it could be baking, it could be making music, but it's very much your mind, your movements, your breath are moving together toward this common goal in forward motion. Under that is concentration, focus. So that would be using your mind to focus on breath, using your mind to notice all the sensations of the body. That's a concentration focus. Underneath that is a state of that you all, no matter what kind of meditation you practice, you'll get here, mm-hmm. which is this, Dan Siegel refers to it, and others in the world, they refer to it as the plane of possibility. And it's actually the state of homeostasis, which is that it's not neutral. It's this state of becoming. It's the improvisation. It's the yes and. It's the next. And what that feels like when you're living there in a meditative state is that you feel this beautiful sense of connectedness and a very grounded sense of sort of pulse and emergence, but without all the silos of this is my mind, this is my body, this is my focus. But the thing is that any meditation practice or mindfulness practice probably has various moments of those 4 tiers to it. Mm-hmm. Certain practices, certain, Zen Buddhism focuses everything a little differently, but all roads lead to the capacity to notice one's own impulses and thoughts and conditioning as almost this sort of like object, like, oh wow, there's that thought again, and allows us to be able to take the time to be able to have more agency and choice over, am I going to just move into that judgment and then all the activities and the re-embodiment of tightness, or am I going to do something like hydrate, mm-hmm. breathe, yeah. And it's, yeah. So I'm a long talker, so I'll take a pause.
It's really interesting a as a jazz musician and an improvisational musician and teacher, hearing these 4 steps, because it speaks to me so much about jazz and so much what I try to impart to my students who are young improvisers and trying to understand how to spontaneously create out of this thing that's being spontaneously created. Um, and just thinking about those 4 layers and how they can connect into this kind of cool medium is extremely interesting to me. And I just read The Unfettered Mind. I don't know if you've read that book about
No, but I'll write it down.
it's really good. It's one of the old Buddhist samurai scrolls, but it's not a samurai writing it. It's a Zen master and a swordsman writing to each other. And they talk a lot about flow and about this not stopping and this, again, I get all of my young improvisers to read at least the first section, because it's, this mindfulness is so amazing when you're in an improvisational art. It seems like it's such a big part of how our brains connect in that creativity.
Yeah, and I feel like it spans, like that's the thing. Artists have a leg up often on not perfectly, not every day, but have a leg up on understanding these concepts of flows and collaboration. That is such an experiential gift to provide to the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm.
But that also, what comes to mind when we talk about that sense of flow state is that when we are suffering from unresolved trauma and toxic stress, so a lifetime of stress or developmental challenges all lead to the same conflicted space, is that the unknown is terrifying.
Yeah.
So a lot of trauma and stress, what we do is we overwork our control muscle. And that once you're actually in a space that feels grounded and resourced and safe, once you have enough resources in your human toolkit, that space of the unknown that you encounter as an improviser
Mm-hmm.
is so exciting.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, working on a novel or working on a play. It's like, I understand the form I'm filling. I might understand some key things I'm moving toward, but it's this unfolding of whatever it is that I'm leaning into.
Yeah.
That's thrilling.
Yeah.
And that's really what the mindfulness practice does. It's like how to create, our bodies are really the first instrument. And so it's tuning and conditioning the instrument of self to be able to be collaborative, improvisational, useful, and competent.
Mm-hmm.
In this human experiment.
Yeah. Well, Stacy, thank you so much for being with us today and having this beautiful conversation with me. We will get a bunch of links from Stacy and post them all below. So there's a bunch of different resources and different options for ways to start exploring this very cool and interesting world that comes
Wonderful.
at a very poignant time right now in history. It seems, as we're speaking, it seems like a lot in a lot of different levels could be helpful to a lot of different people. So thank you again.
Absolutely.
For sharing and providing this information and being here with us today, Stacy.
Zac, thanks so much. And I look forward to connecting with you and anyone who happens to wander into brain food. Thanks for doing it.
Thanks again.
Okay, bye.